Today, we're joined by Robert August, founder and president of North Star Synergies. Robert is an internationally recognized sales, marketing, and management strategist with over 5 decades of experience in real estate and business development. He has been involved in marketing and merchandising more than $60 billion in real estate across residential, commercial, resort, and mixed-use developments, and he has helped raise hundreds of millions for major industry organizations. Robert specializes in helping companies grow through strategic marketing, sales systems, and creating powerful customer experiences. And he's done it successfully through both booming markets and economic downturns. Robert, great to have you on the call today.
Joe, it's a pleasure for me, and I'm glad to be with such an accomplished individual as yourself.
Appreciate that. So, Robert, where I'd like to start is tell me how you got into the business and where it brought you to your role today and how it fits into the big picture of North Star.
Well, thank you. I grew up in a wonderful family business background, and I was the youngest of the fourth generation and the only one who wanted to carry the torch further. And I was voted out at the time not to continue moving in the direction of the family business. And I was fortunate to be introduced to an industrial psychologist who represented a number of businesses and took some tests and interviews and was introduced to, at the time, the largest building franchise network in the United States with 214 builders participating. And they needed to enhance their customer service department at Ridge Homes. And I was selected, and I spent 2 years with Ridge Homes and enjoying the opportunity to meet many builders and many consumers of the builders in a customer service role. And of many customers, only one ever called to say thank you. Everyone else called to complain. And so I transitioned into real estate and enjoyed my career beginning aspect, working with developers and builders within the construction industry.
Okay. And after you got into that beginning, how did that drive to the stages you went through to be where you're at today? And how does that align with your business today?
Another great question. Towards the end of the 2 years, I was training individuals who were earning 50% more than I, and they had come into the company with graduate degrees. And I went to the personnel department and I said, this just doesn't make sense. You know, I'm the one who's training these other people. And the personnel director said, well, they have a graduate degree. And I said, so because they have a graduate degree, they're being promoted and they don't know anything about this company. They know nothing about this industry. And I'm the one who's training them. And they said, and we're glad you are doing that. So I asked the person, I thought about this, came back the next day and asked the personnel director for a 2-year leave of absence so I could go back to graduate school and earn a graduate degree in business development and international management. And they looked at me and they said, well, we don't do that. So I thought about it some more, and I really have the support of an outstanding individual and my best friend, Penny, who was also my wife. And so I started applying to graduate schools and was accepted and handed in my 2-week notice and went off to graduate school and obtained an international management degree in business development. And then was recruited through the school and shortly afterwards and went to work for a builder developer in Philadelphia who was launching a new community in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and was able to achieve a lot of success. Initially, we did while we were building our model homes and getting ready to introduce the product to the consumers and to the real estate brokerage community. And almost to the day that we opened the door, we had a setback in the sense that Bethlehem Steel, which was the largest employer in a 3-city area of Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, declared bankruptcy just as we were opening our models. I figured originally the builders that I worked for, the principals, didn't want to make any order changes. And our sales were very, very, very modest at best initially before we opened the models. And I had this one customer who kept coming back and wanted to live in a custom neighborhood. And they just didn't have the financial wherewithal. And they wanted to know if we would do change orders. And the president of the company kept yelling at me and screaming, said, "No, we don't do change orders. We sell a finished product and they take it or leave it." The sales were very slow initially, right before we opened, and I decided to present an offer to the builder developer with this buyer who wanted to live across the street in the custom neighborhood. And so we put together the transaction, and it was a metamorphosis. I walked in with a full price contract, no discount, and there were more change orders. By the time I was finished with the buyer, there was more profit in the change orders than there was in the base price of the home. And the president of the company was yelling and screaming at me, and he had a habit of doing it religiously. And I said, when he calmed down, I said, look at the exhibit. And when he looked at the exhibit and he saw how much money we made, he turned to me and he said, "Okay, we now do change orders." And through the next several years while I was with the company, every home we sold was like selling two homes, because we became known as the change order builder. And as a result, when the community was finished with 256 homes, it was like selling 512. And I mastered the art of change orders and also worked with a sales team. I was what you would call a working sales manager. So I sold consumers as well as managed the salespeople who also sold on our team. And I learned a lot about sales directly, and of course, a lot about marketing, and grew that into, at the point, we were the builder from Philadelphia in Allentown, and it was a homey market, if you will. And they didn't like outsiders. And my father-in-law was in the glass business, and he told me a story when I went to work in Allentown. He said, we tried to compete in Allentown for years. His business was established in 1898. And he turned to me and he said, the Hobermans got there in 1835, and we could never move them. We could never take any business away or earn any business. So initially we were rejected. And once we started making change orders, to the delight of the consumers, we became the number one builder in the marketplace while I was with the company and thereafter. So I learned what worked. I learned what didn't work in the market at that time. And we were able to overcome the negativity of Bethlehem Steel dropping 25,000 employees. I learned about networking with manufacturers. And Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton had other major manufacturers, certainly not as big as Bethlehem Steel, but Mack Truck was 2 miles away. Air Products was 6 miles away. A Schaefer Brewery moved out of Brooklyn into Allentown, Pennsylvania. They were 8 miles away. So I would go to the personnel departments and meet with the personnel departments and leave my brochures, and I would do education programs for anybody who wanted to listen about buying a new home. And I was more ethereal. I just didn't use our community at Country Crossing as the example, but I was able to ingratiate myself. And I learned, I had gone to Bethlehem Steel way before they had declared bankruptcy. And I met their personnel department, the gentleman in charge of all personnel. And he taught me more about getting involved in the local community, in economic development councils, chambers of commerce, and other trade associations. And that really propelled me because I was able to lure and attract business from all these manufacturers in the area. And one day I went to a chamber of commerce meeting, and before I went there, I said, can I sit anywhere? And they said, yes, you can sit anywhere. And I started sitting. The first time I went to a meeting, there was the number one department store in the trading area was called Hess's. And I sat next to the chairman of the board, and I started realizing these people, they all use number 2 leaded pencils. They all eat M&Ms. They all use Kleenex tissue. They're the same as me. Or as I am. So I went and I started meeting all these captains of industry and was able to attract many of their employees to participate in our community. and buy. And then I was recruited to go to Colorado and work on a large master plan community. 6 months after I'd gotten here, I was told by the owner of the company that they had interviewed 62 people, and this community was in a blue collar area, and it was an upscale luxury community centered between Boulder and Denver, Colorado. And they told me that nobody believed you could sell upscale housing and commercial development and retail in Westminster, Colorado. And 3 years and 8 months later, we were the number one community for custom homes, and outsold even most of the communities in the entire metro area in a blue collar market, because I figured out how to take everything I had learned in Allentown and parlay that with what I was doing in Westminster, Colorado. And we created promotional events that were second to none. That we were so successful that the Department of Energy came to me while I was working for this company, and they said, "Would you volunteer and put together a program and do the first solar parade of homes in the United States?" And at the time, gasoline was a second wave of embargoes. And in today's dollars and cents, a gallon of gas would be equivalent to $13.50. So the federal government and the state government and a lot of the local cities came up with tax incentives that were tax credits and deductions. And I was able to market them and create a parade of homes throughout the metro area with least expensive to the most expensive homes, and attracted 125,000 plus to these 10 homes. And as a result, they sold hundreds of homes. We built a bigger reputation for our neighborhood called the Ranch, and kept selling in a market with interest rates that started rising to 16%. And,
Oh, wow.
And all the bottom line here was using promotional opportunities through public relations and advertising to generate qualified traffic. And what happens in a down market, most people stop advertising, publicizing, and promoting. They don't think it's going to work. So any business. And I was always taught that in our family business, when the market slowed down, whether it was 10 years, 20 years, 40 years after the company had been established, to continue to market and take away market share. Like a young guy who thought he knew it all, I would always ask my father and father-in-law what their opinion was. And I kept learning from them. And they told me stories about how they had taken market share away from the competition in down markets, more so than regular markets, because the competition stopped marketing and in many ways stopped selling, would lay off salespeople where they would add salespeople. So it was a great lesson to watch, to learn from what they had experienced and grow the businesses out here in Colorado, and received a lot of recognition for what I had done. The National Association of Home Builders acknowledged me as the youngest sales marketing director to ever win the Sales Marketing Director of the Year award from NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders. And because of what I was able to do in a down market and come up with strategies to use trade associations, economic development councils, chambers of commerce, boards of realtors, and home builders association. And then I blended it with secondary groups like the Optimist Club and Rotary and Lions Clubs. And we would go to all of these meetings, meet business folks, and use them, like I did in Allentown, to grow our lead generation and created networks of referrals and leads. And to this day, it still works. So in down markets, we've been able to excel, Joe, based on the ability to work through nonprofits and not-for-profit organizations and use their money to promote our companies.
So that leads me to my next question, which is, what major shifts are you seeing in real estate and development right now compared to those past downturns that you've worked through?
It's really interesting. A lot of people are panicking right now, especially those who came into the industry in 2011 or after. None of them that I'm speaking about experienced 2008, 9, and 10, which was dismal. And there was an economic storm. It was the perfect storm in late 2008. It crippled the industry and crippled the economy. And most people think in today's world that if you use SEO, search engine optimization, if you use social media, that's all you have to do. But years and years ago, I do a lot of reading, and I've read books of quotes. And there was a great quote that I read from John Wanamaker. And John Wanamaker was noted as one of the first major department store retailers. And it created a wonderful network in Philadelphia, in downtown Philadelphia. And he was asked about his success one day by a reporter from the Philadelphia Bulletin, which was a major daily newspaper. And the young man asked him, how do you know how your marketing works? And he turned to the reporter and he said, I know that 50% of my advertising, public relations, and promotion works. I haven't been able to figure out which 50% it is. And and it was like a lightning bolt that it hit me. And always look for different ways to market. Look for patterns. Learn from what other people are doing to generate qualified leads. And we've been doing it forever. And we don't rest on our laurels. We continue to ask our buyers. We continue to ask the business to business and business to consumers what they like, how they are interested in learning about products and services. And we modify our marketing campaigns. Basically, I'll share this with you in the audience. If you have a 5-year plan, it's nothing really at the end of the day more than a 3-month plan. Because within 90 days, initially how your marketing is working with and for you, whether it's leads generating through your website or signage or more advertising, public relations, promotional events. You should know what is helping you gravitate to the right mix of your buyers based on the ability to continue selling and closing whatever products and services you have.
You mentioned before when I had spoken to you, we talked about SEO and digital market. How has that shift impacted business performance from your perspective? Now, we talked about this before. How do you feel it's affected business performance?
I think, it's really an important ingredient. Both are important ingredients. And the one thing that I will continue to share is that you really need to use the media. You need to work with other corporations. There's a term called an acronym OPM. It's other people's money. And when you can align yourself, for example, with a nonprofit like the American Heart Association and do a promotion with them, or the American Lung Association, pick your favorite one. Whenever we do promotions with corporations that we work with, we always ask the folks that we're working with, what are your favorite nonprofits and why? And we build a marketing campaign around it, and then we build promotions around it, because what we're doing is creating an alliance with that organization and using their marketing dollars to promote whatever it is that we're working on. So what we've been able to do is, outside of SEO and digital marketing, is to look at ways that we can complement those two marketing medium points and then build a program that encompasses all of the other marketing mix that one could think about. And by doing that, it makes a positive difference.
And the key, I think we talked about to all that, is the end game is that all those tools are used for one main purpose: to get face-to-face interaction.
Yeah,
because it's still the game.
And that's it. In my world, most people will tell you the 3 most important ingredients in real estate are location, location, location. Great point. To me, it's secondary. The 3 most important ingredients in business development, regardless of real estate, or inclusive of real estate, are contact, contact, contact. Nothing happens without people engaging people. And what's so fascinating is that when you talk about a cultural change, a lot of the buyers don't want to interface with salespeople. And where the evolution has taken us, we do everything we can to educate our sales team members as well as the other people that we consult. Focus on 3 pillars in defining your business as a salesperson. Establish trust, respect, and rapport. Those 3 ingredients, or those 3 points of interest, will help you grow your business, Joe, more quickly, and staying true to them, and focus on the needs of your buyers, whether it's business to business again or business to consumer, and focus on the need. If you start focusing on the wants, you could conceivably lose the buyer because their wants are too many. But when you find out what their needs are, you can then tailor your sales presentation to stay focused and close that buyer with more happiness, if you will, because you're creating a results proven process to deliver what the customer really needs.
So with that in mind, what right now in terms of sales and marketing strategies is working for builders and developers or realtors? And also, on top of that, what do you think most companies are struggling with or leaving money on the table about today?
I think the pragmatism is lost. The focus is trying to sell products to people. And
what is working well right now in terms of sales and marketing strategies for builders, developers, or even real estate agents? And what are most companies struggling with or leaving money on the table for today?
The answer is twofold. The first one is that there's a term, I believe, that Albert Einstein created, or the definition of insanity is that when you do the same thing over and over and get the same results, that's insane. And what's happening is that so many of the sales managers are doing exactly that. They keep training on the same principles without understanding where the market is and how to change the way people think. There's another great motivational speaker, a philosopher, if you will, Wayne Dyer. And he said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So for the audience today, those 2 points, both from Einstein and Dyer, are in being. If what we're doing isn't working, we have to look for other ways to do business. And the other thing that I would share with you is that don't discount your price. Whenever you discount pricing, it affects all the people that you sold previously at a higher price. And what it does negatively to those individuals, it makes them very unhappy because they lost out on a so-called transaction, or you might say deal. So what we have always done is we've never discounted price in my entire career. What we have done is value engineered the product and or added incentives to help maintain the level of the original purchase prices that were of the goods and services purchased by other individuals, so that we never affected their equity. When I first became involved in the industry, in real estate, in a for sale arena, it was said to me that people were so guarded about their equity. And I came up with a saying, that sort of like was a play on words. And I remember saying to another peer of mine, the market's changing and it's slowing down. Having spoken to so many consumers over the years, so many buyers and prospects, I said, here's what I've come up with. Take my firstborn, but don't you dare take my equity. The concept was that as soon as you start touching people's equity, you lose the faith, of those that you previously sold. And in any business, you want the past buyers to become your best ambassadors of sale. You want them to become third-party testimonials, endorsements. But as soon as you erode their equity, you've lost them forever. So those are changes. I mean, there's a lot of people that are reducing prices. There's a lot of people that are not paying attention to the buyers, and it's just common throughout the industry.
Right. So which metrics or outcomes do you focus on most when you're helping improve performance for those that you work with?
We go back, we use the critical path in sales, and it's basically meeting, greeting, demonstrating the product, service. It's handling objections or concerns. It's also closing the buyer, and it's teaching the sales staff not just to depend on the company to generate qualified leads, but teaching them how to go create the leads as well as referrals. And what we find in most instances, a lot of salespeople are afraid to interact. They love when all the leads are brought to them, but they're afraid to go out and generate qualified leads and referrals on their own. And we spend a lot of time educating salespeople about how to do it and how to do it seamlessly. So it's second nature. We do a lot of role play. Well, not only we provide the education, and we then role play. And by role playing, Joe, it's really one of the toughest things you can ever do with a salesperson because you're selling your peers. And if you can accomplish the goal of selling your peers successfully, you can sell anybody. Your peers are your greatest, number one, your greatest competitors, and number two, create the biggest fear factor for you because they know what you should be doing. And so, as a result of being able to establish yourself as a great role player, you're going to be a great salesperson.
Okay. Well, for those that are listening right now, where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth in the next 6 to 12 months as a real estate professional?
Another wonderful question. The opportunity is for a real estate professional that I see is to align yourself with nonprofits and not-for-profit organizations. It's amazing. I'll never forget, we have sold a lot of upscale real estate. And there are certain real estate brokers over the years that have done extremely well. And what was so fascinating when I first came here and started going to events uh, for nonprofits, I would often see a lot of the same real estate brokers at these events. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, I'm talking about 15, 20. I'm not talking about 40,000 that are in our market. And
Right.
what I found is that these people would be sitting at these tables with the captains of industry. And so, the same way that I had learned in Allentown about networking through the Chamber of Commerce, these people were networking directly with these nonprofits, whether it was the Easter Seal Society, multiple sclerosis, American Cancer Society, whatever it might be. And they would attend a lot of these events, sit at these tables, meet the people in the cocktail hour, and develop referrals and leads. The same way you can do through chambers of commerce, economic development councils, boards of realtors, home builder associations, and so many other trade associations. And it's all you need to do, is Google nonprofits and or trade associations. And in major markets, you'll come up with 300, 400, 500, even 1,000 different groups that you can matriculate to. So it's an easy investment of time, but like a lot of things, if I told you to make 50 calls today, you might not be able to make 50 calls. But if you go to an event and there's 400, 500 people there, if you go for the cocktail hour and you go and sit down and meet people throughout the cocktail hour, you're going to meet 30, 40, 50 people. You couldn't make that many calls in an hour, let alone a day. And you're seeing all these people and you learn, for example, before I go to any business meeting, I always call the organization that I'm going to be participating with and ask them for a list of the participants that are going to be there. So I know who to focus on. And if I can't get the
That's
list,
a good one.
I'll go directly. I'll be at the event a half an hour before it's open. And as the staff is laying out the name tags, I'll read all the name tags. And then I'll look at on the name tags, they usually put the table. So if Joe Glennon is at table 8 and I haven't seen Joe in 2 years and I want to visit with Joe, I'm going to go to table 8 sometime during the event and meet Joe. And I mean, I'll do other things too. But I mean, simple things. I'll also ask the staff if I can help them with registration of people coming in. If they say, no, 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 I'll go to the front door and welcome everybody as if it's my event. And
That's good.
at the end of the event, I'll go to the front door again and I'll thank everybody for coming. But I can go on and on with all of this, but I've learned how to use these events as lead generation opportunities. And there's so much that you can do and encourage everybody. The other thing I would share with you when I'm at these events and networking hour, surprisingly, I never spend more than 2 or 3 minutes with anybody. I'll exchange business cards. If they need something, I'll let them know. I'll follow up with them after the meeting with a call. Everybody that needed a meeting usually follow up within 2 to 24 hours after I've met with them. And then I'll follow up with an email and also make a copy of the email and send it out as snail mail, maybe with a personal note on it as well. But the real key is this follow-up, staying in front of the audience and letting them know that you want their business and or that you can help them with their business.
Very good. Very good. All right, one more question for the call today. If there is one major issue across the industry that you could fix today, what would that be?
It would be follow up.
Okay.
95% of everyone has never followed up after the first meeting. I mean, this is historically, this is not new. Most salespeople believe that through their intuitive nature, that if they dismiss a buyer, that buyer is really not a buyer. And what they're missing is the fact that most people, as I said earlier, buyers are not liars. Buyers are afraid. They want to meet you and get to know you before they start telling you their entire story. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're buying ties or shirts, or whether you're buying a car, or a home. It's all human nature. And too many salespeople dismiss buyers because they don't think that they're ready to purchase, which is a huge mistake. Get to know the buyers, get to know the people, and follow up with them.
That is great information. So we've been speaking with Robert August from North Star Synergies. Robert, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you sharing your insight, what you're seeing in the market, and how you're building business through both challenging and thriving times.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Whenever I can help you or your audience, our operators are standing by right now.